So last year, we talked about having Team Tennessee t-shirts, right? And we said, wearing a Team Tennessee t-shirt shows commitment. This year, we've got polos, we've got coats, we've got all kinds of great Team Tennessee gear. And a lot of you were wearing it yesterday. Now the governor shows up and you leave me hanging and everybody's wearing a jacket. But we have all this, we've stepped up our game. But if you recall, either it was here last year, I said, really, nothing says commitment, right, like a tattoo. So Governor, we're committed. The Team Tennessee tattoo. This may be my last appearance in front of you all, so I want to say thank you for having me here. But, so I'd like to give a big Team Tennessee cheer the way only we know how to do it to our governor. So we know what to say. We are. Say, second time, much louder. We are. Team Tennessee. We are. Team Tennessee. Thank you. Let's welcome the governor.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. All right, so you kind of have a seat, everybody. You kind of bailed yourself out there. Last year he didn't have a tie on either, by the way. And I said, okay, next year either a tattoo or a tie, one or the other. And I'm thinking he didn't come through, but obviously you did. So I'm expecting to see that tattoo next week as well. So if it's a temporary one, we'll find out. Hey, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I've seen a lot of you over the last day or two, and everybody goes, hey, great conference, way to go. That just reiterates the point that the governor gets way more credit or way more blame for everything that goes on than he or she should ever deserve. The truth is, I had absolutely zero to do with this other than asking some really good people to come work for the state. And so a lot of people worked really hard, and I'm really proud of the work you all did. So thank you. I love it when people come up to me all through the day and say, hey, this is the best conference I've been to. And for all of you who worked so hard, thanks so much. I appreciate that. Okay, we actually... In the spirit of always having more good news about Tennessee to announce, we have some red-hot news. A press release is actually going out as we speak that Warner Music Group, one of the largest American music companies, is adding 175 more jobs right down the road here. They're going to keep their Music Row office, but they're moving their U.S. financial team here. That's the label of... Willie Nelson and Emmy Lou Harris and Blake Shelton and a bunch of other folks, and they're adding to their Nashville presence. So more good news continues to happen, so thanks to all of you who are part of that. All right, I always say that I have the best job in the world, and one of the reasons is I really do get to work with some incredible people, and many of those are folks that you all helped elect and send here to Nashville to work with us, and several of those folks are here. So I'm going to ask them to stand, and then I'd ask you to hold your applause, and we'll clap for all of them in the end. We have our Senate Majority Leader, Senator Mark Norris, with us. Senator Jim Tracy, I know I saw somewhere. There's Jim. Glad you're here. Senator Mike Bell is here from McMinn and Bradley. Thank you for being here, sir. Senator Ken Yeager from Roane and a whole bunch of other counties. Where is Senator Yeager? Is here. He's still actually collecting grants. We gave out those grants last week, and Ken got like 47 of them somehow. And Senator Kerry Roberts is here right down front with us. So let's clap for all those senators, if you would. We have almost enough of the House to have a quorum here. And we're going to Representative Deborah Moody. I saw Debbie right here. Thank you. Representative Barry Doss is here. Representative Patsy Hazelwood is right down front. Representative Mike Sparks. Representative Bill Dunn is with us, I think. I know that Representative David Byrd is here because I can see him. He and his wife. Coach, good to see you. Representative Johnny Shaw. Representative Kelly Kiesling is right over here. He's got a whole bunch of counties as well. Representative Steve McDaniel and Representative Mark Pody. I think I saw Mark somewhere. Please help me thank them for their incredible work. So several of you have heard this story, but seeing Randy up here, I had to tell it again because it's another part about being governor that kind of reflects a whole lot of the reality of it in terms of what it is versus how people perceive it. 3 or 4 months ago, Randy and I went to Asia and spent 8 or 9 days traveling from Korea to various points in China to Japan and came home. And a little secret, some of you know this, is, Governor, you get certain perks when you travel in the U.S. So you don't have to go through the metal detector. You don't wait through all those lines. You just kind of miraculously show up at the gate and you're on the plane. And when you land, there's a trooper from whatever that state is. If you land in Texas, there's a Texas Ranger there, and they meet you, and all of a sudden you're in your car and whisking away, and it's really nice. But when you travel internationally, it doesn't really happen like that. And so we were traveling, and we were actually late. Our flight was late from Seoul, Korea to Hangzhou, China, and we land. And so our wives were with us, and I'm saying, Chrissy, hurry, let's get our stuff out of the overhead bins. We're late for this really important company we were going to see. And as we're doing it, Chrissy looks out the window and goes, "What's that all about?" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "There's a band out there and all this military people." And I said, I don't know. Just get your stuff. Hurry, we're late. And so we get the stuff, and as the minute we walk out the door, all of a sudden the band, it's one of those old-style airports where you exit to the tarmac instead of going through the terminal. And we walk down, as soon as we walk out the door, the band starts playing, and all these people come to attention. And it's really impressive. And we get to the bottom of the steps, and this guy hands Chrissy this bouquet of roses, which she later mentioned was more than the combined total of roses I'd given her in our entire marriage. I don't know why she had to throw that part in there. It kind of ruined the whole deal. But she do this, and they have this little ceremony. It's really impressive. And the next thing you know, we're in these limousines, and we're being whisked. We're off we go. And I said, "Wow, that was really nice, but what was that all about?" To our host, and he said, "Do you want an honest answer?" I said, "Well, sure." And he goes, "Well, we're having the G20 International Summit here next month. That's the summit of the 20 largest industrial nations, and we were practicing." Said, and you were Obama. So I said, "Well, at least I got some roses for my wife out of it." So that's kind of what life is like. It's not always what it looks to be. Hey. One of the other things about my life is when you go speak somewhere, they hand you a speech, and it has lots of statistics and facts and figures and things that I should make certain I talk about. But I called a little audible on the way over here, a little bit. Representative Moody, this is a little bit your fault from a conversation we had. When I went up to Representative Moody, and she said, "Is everything going great?" And I said, "Well, no. That's not how my life works, and I bet it's not how your life works either." And it kind of devolved from there into a little bit of a conversation about the national political scene. And then we came back to talking about Tennessee. That was all very brief, but you made me change my speech, so I'll go from there. Here's the reality. I think all of us forget what your politics are. All of us are concerned about what's happening on the national scene. Again, I don't. Wherever you are in the political spectrum, I think you'd look and say, the debate around this national election has not been a healthy one. It's been filled with more vitriol and more claims and accusations than it has, well, here's my idea for how to solve that problem. We have real issues in this country. We have real issues that are around everything from income inequality to an economy that in its supposed 7th year of growth is still at 1 or 2% instead of the 4% that we think we should be at. We have issues that, like I said, span the spectrum from social to economic to just our way of life that leave people a lot of questions. And a lot of us are frustrated because this election has not touched on any of those. If you think about it, and I've made this point before, but if you added all the Republican primary debates and all the Democratic primary debates and the 3 general election debates for the presidential candidates and include the vice presidential debate, I bet there's been maybe 10 minutes of discussion about education, maybe, in all those 25 debates. Okay, I would say that's one of the biggest issues facing our country, and how are we going to continue to make certain we're providing opportunity for people across the spectrum. When the issues go to economic questions, and like I said, it quickly just turns to accusations and claims rather than solutions about what we could actually do. So there's a certain frustration, I think, that we all feel regardless of what your politics are. But here's the good news. You live in a place where it doesn't happen that way. You live in a place where we're not trying to figure out if we should ever try to balance the budget. You live in a place where we've actually created a surplus over the last 2 or 3 years. And people talk about that somehow like that's a bad thing. We have some neighboring states, Virginia and Alabama and several others who aren't in that situation. They're in a deficit. And I can guarantee you their conversations aren't nearly as fun to have as the one that we're in. But we're in that situation not because it just happened to us, but because a lot of people have worked hard. We have a legislature and an administration that have worked together to say, we're not going to just project any old revenue figure that we think we would like to get and then have expenses go to make it. We've been conservative in our projections, and then, oh, by the way, we've actually outgrown that, and I'll come back to the reason. We've looked at the size of state government, and we've said, it doesn't have to be this size, and so we've actually shrunk it by somewhere between 5 and 10%. We actually have taken $500 million in ongoing expenses out of the budget, and then our administration actually, in the 6 years that we've had budgets, we've actually underspent by $900 million what was budgeted and returned that back to be allocated again by the General Assembly. So we're in a surplus situation for those reasons, and because we have an economy that's growing faster than the national average. We're basically almost, the GDP in our state is growing almost at twice the rate of the national average, which is phenomenal. The interesting thing is, we're not only adding jobs, just this year compared to this time last year, there's 71,000 more Tennesseans who have a job. More Tennesseans have a job today than have ever had a job in the history of the state. But the good news is, those are jobs that are increasing the median household income in our state. In Tennessee right now, we're tied for first as the state with the fastest increasing median household income. We want that. We're not just out to, when Randy and the ECD team are out recruiting jobs, they're not just out like any job we'll take. We're being thoughtful now as the economy's picked up and unemployment has decreased. We now realize that it's a difficult labor market out there, and so we want to pursue those jobs again that are going to be on the higher paying end or are in more challenging geographic situations. So the good news is you have a state government that is running state government like you run your own household budget, and the results are that incredibly positive. When we talk about being the state with the lowest debt, that matters for something. I just got back from week before last from spending 2 days in New York meeting with the credit rating agencies. And as you all know, Tennessee is a AAA rated state, really for only the second time in our history. But so when we go, we have the 3 constitutional officers, the treasurer, the comptroller, secretary of state, and then some members of the administration, and then we usually take 1 member of the legislature. This year we took the Senate Finance Chair, Randy McNally. But it is incredible to have the conversation with them that we're having now compared to the ones we used to have, because they've seen that we're doing what we said we would do. So the state is in that kind of financial position that we can look at others, and we're doing that, by the way, without doing the 2 solutions that most people get to. Most people say, well, we can do all that, but we'll have to raise taxes. We've actually cut more taxes in the last 6 years than any other legislature and administration team has ever done in 8 years, actually twice as much. And then the other thing that we've done is we've continued to invest in public education. We are not going to be that state that balances the budget by shrinking public education. So last year we had the largest increase in the history of the state without a tax increase for public education, because we're committed to that idea. So while the country's ignoring the whole education discussion, we're saying we get it. We understand there are issues around income inequality. We understand that today's economy is leaving some people behind. And so we can complain about that, we can point fingers, or we can do something about it. And again, this legislature and this administration have worked hard to say, we're going to do 3 things in our K-12 system. Well, actually 4. Number 1, we're going to increase the funding so we can make certain teachers are paid what they should be. Number 2, though, we're going to raise standards and expectations. Then we're going to have assessments, year-end tests that match those standards. And then we're going to have how we evaluate the whole system assessments be a part of that. And so that's why yesterday we could go around the state talking about Tennessee being not just the fastest improving state in the country for English language arts and math scores, but now for science. And so yesterday we were able to announce that Tennessee was the fastest improving state in the country for 8th graders. And by the way, this is the NAEP test they just give to 4th graders and 8th graders. Fastest improving in the country for 8th graders, and second, or tied for second for 4th graders, which makes us overall, obviously, the fastest improving state. We grew science scores at twice the rate of the national average, okay? And importantly, we're also shrinking those. We don't want to ignore our problems, and we understand that there have been some people in our economy that have been underserved, and so the gap between white students and minority students in Tennessee is continuing to shrink. Yesterday, when we announced the test for the first time ever, sorry for us males in the room, but for the first time ever, our female students did as well or better on science than our male students did, which is unheard of. So that'll get claps from half of the room. But that's obviously a big deal, because I talked to a lot of you who are manufacturers in the room, and you say, we need more talent. And the fact that we have a pipeline of people coming up, male and female, white and minority students who are qualified, will change that picture. And so we're doing that, and then the Tennessee Promise is such a big piece of that, making certain that we can provide the workers that you need. So my message today is, Randy is a lot better cheerleader than I am with the Team Tennessee deal, so I won't attempt to go there. But I hope you will say, let's bear down. Let's not miss our moment. I want to be really clear. We have some wind at our back right now as a state. Some of that is due to some of the things I've talked about that we've purposely done, and some of it we've been the beneficiary of, whether it be some education changes that have been a long time in the making, or the fact that we have a booming automobile industry right now that's carrying a lot, that's causing a lot of growth, to the fact that advanced manufacturing across the board in Tennessee is doing really well. All of those things are helping provide a wind at our back. But if we do this right, we can, instead of when things are going well, back off and say, hey, things are really good, we can bear down and put on more steam, if you will. So we can keep running the state that way, so at the end of every year we say, here, taxpayers, we have some money that we're bringing back, and we can keep our taxes and our debt low. We can keep being that state that says, okay, great, we've improved from being somewhere in the 40s when it comes to the states for education, being 44 to 46, to where now we're solidly moving to about the halfway point and maybe above that, and say, well, that's great, but I'm not really satisfied with being 25. Let's see if we can be better than that. And then we can be that state that continues to grow. What I've seen with economic development, this is the last thing I'll say, is it really is a flywheel. The better you do, the more it attracts. And the better we do, it attracts more people who previously wouldn't see us on their radar, and it attracts more amenities, better air service, better other quality of life issues, and then we can add more. It really is that flywheel, and we're at that point. But the last thing I'll say is this. What we can't do is ignore our problems, okay? And there's two that I think are, there's several, but there's a couple of things that are clouds on the horizon when I look at the overall economic development situation. The first is economic development in our rural areas. And when I look around this room, many of you all represent those parts of the state. So the Rural Task Force has been working. By the way, if you're a member of that task force and you're in this room, would you stand up really quick? I think there's several of you here, our Rural Economic Development Task Force. So as we continue to grow in our urban and suburban areas, we have to make certain that the rural parts of our state that, let's be honest, make up so much of who we are as a state, that they don't get left behind. And I think we can do it. They've come up with some great strategies, which we'll be talking about in the next legislative session, and hopefully we'll have some budget impact as well, and we can address that. So that's one. And number two, you all have heard me talking about we have to do something long-term to address our transportation issues in this state. I realize how controversial this is, but in Tennessee, we face our problems and say, what are we going to do about that now? And the analogy I'll give, and some of you have heard me give this, but it's the best one I can come up with. We're like people who have inherited an incredible farm from our parents and grandparents. It's been in our family for generations. and it's well taken care of. And by the way, they passed it on to us with no debt. And the pond holds water, and all the fences are mended, and the barn doesn't leak when it rains, and the house is in great condition, and our whole family can sleep in it. And we've inherited that farm from our generations who came before us, to where we have one of the very best road systems in the country, though we pay one of the lowest amounts per mile to do that. But it can't stay that way. And it is not conservative to pass on to the next generation a farm that is not in as good a condition as the one that you got it from your parents in. And it's not conservative to add debt to a farm that your parents gave you debt-free. And so I have 2 years left in this job. And what my goal is, and I can promise you, is to not coast to the finish line, but to say, what are those big, big things that we have to address? And you have some luxury as a governor on the way out to address those things that a brand new governor might not be able to, just to be honest, politically. And so our intention is to face those and continue this momentum that's happening in Tennessee, because my last word I'm going to come back to is this. We can't waste this moment. There are so many other states that would love to trade places with us. And as I look around this room, there's so many of you all are playing key parts of that, and I'm incredibly grateful for the work that you've done to get us to this point. Now let's not swing at the pitch now that we've gotten to the World Series and we're ready to compete with anybody. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. I'm incredibly grateful for all the work you do. Thanks.